Think about this. Two people can reach the same age, yet one still has energy to walk, travel, cook, laugh, and enjoy life, while the other feels that every year has taken something away. We often blame aging itself, but scientists are increasingly looking at something much more ordinary, the everyday habits that shape our bodies for decades. And Japan offers a fascinating example, not because Japanese food is magical, it isn't, but because traditional Japanese eating patterns combine several habits researchers associate with healthier aging. So let's uncover 7 Japanese food habits that could help your body age more slowly, more strongly, and with more of the life you love still intact. Think of this list not as a Japanese diet you have to copy, but as 7 ideas you can borrow. Some may already be familiar, others may completely change the way you look at your plate. And if you enjoy discovering simple health habits backed by science, consider subscribing. Because sometimes the most valuable health lessons aren't new at all. They're old ideas we simply stopped paying attention to. Now let's start with a habit so simple that most people barely consider it a health strategy, and yet it may be one of the most important. The first habit is surprisingly simple: eating until you are satisfied, not stuffed. In Japan, there is an old expression called hara-hachi bu, often translated as eating until you are about 80% full. It isn't about starving yourself or counting every calorie. It's about stopping before a comfortable meal turns into heaviness. And this simple idea has attracted scientific attention. Researchers have studied calorie restriction for decades. In animal studies, moderate reductions in calorie intake have been linked to changes in metabolism, inflammation, and cellular processes associated with aging. Human research is more complex, but controlled studies suggest that moderate calorie reduction can improve markers related to metabolic health. The key word is moderate. This isn't about eating as little as possible. Especially with age, extreme restriction can increase the risk of losing muscle and important nutrients. Instead, try creating a small pause between "I'm still hungry" and "I need another serving." Eat more slowly. Put your fork down between bites. Avoid eating while distracted. And when you finish, wait a few minutes before automatically getting seconds. You may discover that satisfaction arrives before fullness does. And perhaps that's the deeper lesson. Healthy aging doesn't always begin by adding something to your diet. Sometimes it begins by learning when enough is enough. But what if the secret isn't just how much you eat? The next Japanese habit changes what happens inside your body after you eat. The second habit is fermented food. Think of miso soup, natto, and other fermented foods that have been part of Japanese cuisine for generations. To our ancestors, fermentation was mainly a clever way to preserve food and create flavor. Today, scientists are asking a much more interesting question. What happens to our bodies when we regularly eat these transformed foods? During fermentation, microorganisms change the food's chemistry, creating new compounds and, in some foods, introducing live microbes. Research suggests that fermented foods may influence the gut microbiome and may be associated with improvements in microbial diversity and certain markers of inflammation. Why does that matter for aging? Because your gut is connected to much more than digestion. It interacts with your immune system, metabolism, and overall health. But don't turn miso or natto into a miracle cure. Human research is still developing, and fermented foods differ greatly from one another. The practical lesson is simple. Make them a small part of a varied diet. Add miso to vegetable soup. Try natto with rice if you enjoy its strong flavor. Choose fermented foods you actually like, and watch the sodium content of products such as miso. For centuries, fermentation was simply a way to make food last longer. Today, it may also teach us something about supporting the invisible ecosystem inside us. And the next habit is even simpler. You may already have it sitting in your kitchen. The third habit is drinking green tea. At first, it sounds almost too ordinary to matter. But this simple Japanese ritual contains compounds that scientists have studied for decades. Green tea is rich in polyphenols called catechins. One of the most famous is EGCCG, a compound with antioxidant and other biological activities. Laboratory research suggests these compounds can influence pathways related to oxidative stress, inflammation, and cellular health. But here's the important part. Green tea is not an anti-aging medicine. Human studies are more nuanced. Research has linked regular tea consumption with several favorable cardiovascular and metabolic outcomes. But drinking green tea alone has not been proven to make you live longer. So, where might the real advantage be? Replacement. Imagine replacing a sugary drink with unsweetened green tea. You reduce added sugar while gaining beneficial plant compounds. That small substitution, repeated for years, can matter far more than searching for a miracle beverage. In Japan, tea also became a ritual, a reason to pause, sit down, and pay attention. You can borrow that idea without recreating the ceremony. Try 1 cup of unsweetened green tea during the day, or use a modest amount of matcha if you prefer it. Just remember that green tea contains caffeine, so timing and personal tolerance matter. The lesson is simple. Sometimes a healthy habit works because of what you add and what you stop drinking instead. And number 4 takes us somewhere most people don't expect. The next food comes from the ocean. Number 4 is the ocean on your plate. Sea vegetables like nori, wakame, and kombu have been part of Japanese cuisine for centuries. In many Western kitchens, they can seem exotic. In Japan, they have traditionally been everyday ingredients, appearing in soups, broths, rice dishes, and sushi. And this is where their nutritional profile becomes interesting. Sea vegetables provide fiber, minerals, and various plant compounds. Some also contain iodine, an essential nutrient your thyroid needs to produce hormones that help regulate metabolism. Researchers are also studying seaweed compounds for potential antioxidant, metabolic, and cardiovascular effects. But don't mistake that research for proof that seaweed prevents aging. Human evidence is still developing, and more isn't necessarily better. Some seaweeds can contain very high amounts of iodine, so eating large quantities every day may be inappropriate for some people. The Japanese lesson is more practical. Use nutrient-dense ingredients in small amounts. Add a sheet of nori to rice or vegetables. Put a little wakame into soup. Use kombu occasionally to add depth to a broth. Notice what you're doing. You're not searching for one magical food. You're adding another plant, another source of nutrients, another texture and flavor to your diet. That may be the real strength of traditional Japanese eating, not one superfood, more useful foods working together. And as we move closer to number 5, the focus shifts from minerals and antioxidants to something your body desperately wants to preserve as you age: strength. Number 5 is the protein that doesn't always look like protein: soy. To many people, tofu, edamame, and natto look like side dishes. But in traditional Japanese cuisine, soy has long been a regular source of nourishment. And that matters more as we age. One of the biggest threats to independence isn't simply getting older. It's gradually losing muscle and strength. You may notice it when climbing stairs, carrying groceries, or getting up from a chair. Soy foods provide protein, and they also contain isoflavones, plant compounds that have been widely studied for their potential effects on cardiovascular and metabolic health. Research on soy is complex, but minimally processed soy foods can be part of a nutritious diet. And you don't have to give up meat to use this habit. Try adding tofu to a vegetable stir-fry. Add edamame to rice bowls or salads. If you enjoy natto, use it as a protein-rich breakfast option. The goal isn't to claim that tofu is superior to every other protein. It's to create more variety. As you get older, maintaining muscle requires enough protein, regular physical activity, and adequate overall nutrition. A food like tofu can make that goal easier to reach while adding another plant-based option to your routine. Because growing older is inevitable, but becoming weaker and more dependent isn't something you have to simply surrender to. And the next habit takes this idea even further. It isn't about one food at all. It's about how many different foods you can bring to the same table. Number 6 is the habit of making variety part of every meal. Traditional Japanese cuisine often brings several small components together: rice, soup, a main protein, vegetables, and side dishes. One classic pattern, Ichiju Sansai, centers around one soup and 3 side dishes. But the real lesson isn't the exact formula, it's diversity. Think about a meal built around one food, repeated day after day. Now imagine another with leafy greens, mushrooms, colorful vegetables, tofu or fish, rice, and a small fermented side. Suddenly, your body receives a much wider range of nutrients and plant compounds. And science gives this idea weight. Different plants contain different fibers and phytochemicals. Different foods provide different vitamins, minerals, fats, and proteins. Even the microbes in your gut interact with the variety of compounds reaching your digestive system. You don't need 12 ingredients at every meal. Start small. Rotate your vegetables. Change your fruits. Add mushrooms or beans. Alternate your protein sources. And use color as a simple reminder: green, red, orange, purple, and white. The goal isn't perfection, it's variety. Because your body doesn't need one magical nutrient. It needs thousands of small inputs working together over time. And perhaps that's one of the most powerful lessons hidden in Japanese cuisine. Healthy aging isn't about finding a miracle food. It's about creating a diet with enough diversity to support the body in many different ways. But there's one final habit that can make all the others more powerful, and it has surprisingly little to do with what is on your plate. And now we reach number 7, the habit that may tie everything together. The secret isn't only what you eat, it's how you eat. Imagine 2 people sitting down to the same meal. Same rice, same vegetables, same protein. One eats quickly while scrolling through a phone, barely noticing the food. The other eats slowly, takes smaller bites, and actually pays attention to the flavors and textures. Same meal, very different experience. Traditional Japanese meals often emphasize balance, presentation, variety, and moderate portions. Food isn't necessarily treated as something to consume as quickly as possible between other activities. And that matters because eating speed can influence how much we consume before our body registers fullness. Research has linked faster eating with higher energy intake and some metabolic risks, although it doesn't prove that slow eating alone prevents aging. But the practical lesson is powerful. Try eating one meal a day without your phone. Put your fork down between bites. Notice the taste and texture. And when you feel comfortably satisfied, pause before reaching for more. This also brings the other 6 habits together: smaller portions, fermented foods, green tea, sea vegetables, soy, and variety. The Japanese lesson may not be eat Japanese food. It may be build a relationship with food that your future body can live with. Because healthy aging isn't about becoming younger. It's about protecting more of the person you already are. And sometimes that begins with something as simple as sitting down and actually tasting your meal. And now we reach number 7, the habit that ties everything together. The secret isn't only what you eat, it's how you eat. Imagine 2 people sharing the same meal, same rice, vegetables, and protein. One eats quickly while scrolling through a phone. The other slows down, takes smaller bites, and actually notices the flavors. Same food, very different experience. Traditional Japanese meals often emphasize balance, variety, presentation, and moderate portions. Eating is not simply something to rush through between other activities, and science gives this idea some weight. Faster eating has been associated with greater energy intake and certain metabolic risks, although slow eating alone cannot prevent aging. Still, the practical lesson is powerful. Try eating one meal a day without your phone. Put your fork down between bites. Notice the texture and flavor. And when you feel comfortably satisfied, pause before taking more. Suddenly, the other 6 habits make more sense. Smaller portions, fermented foods, green tea, sea vegetables, soy, and variety. The deeper Japanese lesson may not be eat Japanese food. It may be build a relationship with food that your future body can live with. Because healthy aging isn't about becoming younger. It's about protecting more of who you are. And sometimes that begins with simply sitting down and tasting your meal.